Why the Preakness Stakes? This is a horse that came out fresh from the UA Derby. I know that you were thinking pondering between the Preakness and the Belmont. Why the Preakness?
Look, the Kentucky Derby was going to be too soon for him, and logistically we weren't ready. You know, there's a lot of organisation that has to go into these trips, and I was going to have to make a really early call about if he was going to try and get to the Derby, because obviously he had a place, and it was too early to call it. You know, because even though we'd laid the foundations with all the logistics for him to get here last week, we didn't make a final decision until he'd done his last breeze. If his last breeze last week had been a bit flat, anything had gone wrong, well, clearly we wouldn't be here. But I was impressed with what he saw. Jimmy McCarthy, who's been by his side in Dubai and here, another former jump rider. He's nearly as old as me. Jimmy is a fantastic judge of a horse. So he rode him his last breeze. So he's carrying about 13 stone. Last breeze last week, and he was very happy. I liked what I saw, and he liked what he felt. So I said, "Come on, let's do this. Let's get him on the plane."
How is he looking so far? I saw him this morning. He's looking marvelous so far here at the track.
He's a very good-looking horse, and he looks very well at the moment. His weight, I think, looks good. Yeah, you know, he's come through a fairly difficult sort of regime in the last week. Okay. You know, aeroplanes, lorries, different stables, quarantine. It's been tough for him. But so with that in mind, you know, there's always a chance that a horse is going to stop eating, stop drinking. They're going to get a bit light, a bit overly stressed. That doesn't seem to be the case. He's eaten and drunk very well, and I think his shape is good. I think he's mentally a little bit, probably slightly more on edge than he was in Dubai. But then we've got to remember that going into the UAE Derby, that was a home game for him. He'd lived there for 5 months. Yeah. So he kind of came out of his stall and went to the race course, did his thing, you know, and that was his fourth race. No, fifth. That was his fifth race in Dubai. Yeah, he won his first two. He was second in the Guinea, second in the Al Bastakir, and then second in the thing. So he was well used to that. So this is obviously a bit different, you know, so it's not a massive surprise that he's mentally slightly in a different place because, you know, he was well used to what he was doing in Dubai, and this is all very new, you know.
Talking about new things, in Dubai, there's the starting gate, the European model. Here in US, obviously the American model. I know that this morning he not just canter, but he also went to the gate schooling and paddock schooling. How did that go?
It went okay. You know, he's never been great in the gate. You know, arguably he chucked a couple of races away in Dubai by being the last to leave the gate. So we've been working hard at that. As he's become better at jumping out with the others, his behaviour has deteriorated. So we can't have everything. So he can be a bit of a child in there. He went up on his hind legs this morning and he had a little wrestle around. But we've kind of got to accept now that is probable with him. What's important is the jump. You know, if he reverts to the old heart of honour that's a bit too polite, you know, he's going to be lapped. Yes. So hopefully he'll jump somewhere with them tomorrow. Hopefully he'll behave okay. It's never going to be his strength, but as long as it's not a sort of race-losing weakness, then I'll take it, you know.
Definitely. The saddling process. I know that this is a horse that have his own temper, as you just mentioned. What is going to look like that saddling process tomorrow?
Hopefully calm. calm and without incident. Yeah, no, look, he's one of these horses, you know, and I think a lot of good horses are like this. You can light the fuse. And once the fuse is lit, you know, they take on, they become wild animals. And, Yeah, he can be tricky enough to get the saddle on. We've got a plan. We'll see how it goes. We'll probably be improvising if the plan won't work, but we'll give it a go. I'm hoping that will be okay, but we're ready for him. We know what he's going to do if he is going to misbehave. He can misbehave and not completely throw his race away.
Okay.
You know, because he's a tough character. You know, he's his own man. You know.
So he can misbehave, but or keep his power and his intent to run.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Look, if he was walking around the paddock really quiet, I'd be more worried.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, that's really important. Then we need to pay attention to that. What it will be the perfect trip in a speedy track that like this one? Supposedly it's not gonna rain, which is good. It's a good sign. But what it will be the perfect treat for him tomorrow?
I really don't know, but as long as there's no horses in front of him when we get to the post, then I'm happy. I don't know how it's going to happen, but look,
It could happen.
nothing's impossible.
Exactly.
Look, the girl child is doing the steering. She will have a plan. She'll have plan A to Z. I have a suspicion that there's not going to be too many decisions to make. I think she's going to just be suffering a little bit. I do think the horse is long stamina. As long as he's not too far out of his comfort zone through the first half of the race, he'll finish off good.
After the Preakness, I know it is too soon. It is the intention to stay with the horse here in US to give it a try to the Belmont?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, when we were planning the trip, you know, it's not cheap. It's a long way to come. So a 2-race strategy really is our aim. So hopefully nothing that happens tomorrow will change that. Yeah, we'd like